What's up, everybody? Welcome to a special episode of Nino Radio. Today, we're going to give a recap and a summary, firsthand experience of a person that was in the eye of the storm, Hurricane Ian in Florida. Happens to be my sister, Christi. Christi's on the line right now. And before I bring her on, y'all, I just want to say this was a crazy time. We do not want to forget that this happened, right? And we just want to bring an update as far as what's going on now, what she lived through. Heck of an experience. I mean, what kind of luck is that, which I don't really believe in luck, but a sister of mine, my producer, was in the thick of it, was in the eye of the storm. Christy, you there?
I am here.
Welcome, sis. And without further ado, God bless everybody watching now. Sis, explain to the people watching right now basically the conditions of Florida throughout the year. Basically, y'all are expectant of certain seasons, right, with the hurricanes. Can you explain that before we go into your story? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we have a hurricane season, and it ends November the 30th and starts. Oh my gosh, what day does it start? I think it's June 1st, and ends November the 30th. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. But so we're used to having that's part of living in paradise, and I think I told you that, Nino. You know, we have 363 great days a year, and we know that what we might have to deal with for a few days of terrible storms and things like that. But whenever a big one hits you, it's a little bit longer than a few days.
Wow. Okay. Christy, this storm that approached hurricane, it's Ian, right? I got to get the name right, of
Yeah,
course.
Ian. Yep. hmm
Okay, sis. So let's give an account of leading up to this day. What was on your mind? What did you think? I know the evacuation is a whole different process for you as far as what you're going to do next time. What happened leading up to this? What did you hear? We saw the pictures of the massive hurricane incoming. What did you think, and what was your actual plan leading up the 48 hours before the hurricane hit?
So I'm gonna go just a cup. I'm just gonna go back a little bit further than that, Nino.
Okay.
So we always watch the hurricane. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we always, watch the hurricane tracker whenever we hear that there's a storm, in the Atlantic and things like that. And 90% of the time, anytime that they say that we're going to get hit by a storm, it goes through into Louisiana, Texas. It usually doesn't hit Florida as much as it hits, those Gulf of Mexico areas. So we kept hearing that this storm was headed for us, and the thing that got a little concerning is whenever there's all kinds of different weather, I guess, associations or weather, I don't know what you want to call them, that track how they think that hurricanes are going to go, and it's called a spaghetti model, and it shows the path that they expect it to take. Well, about 5 days before the storm, and all eight of those spaghetti models had it hitting us head on. So kind of knew that we were going to get hit, but they kept changing the intensity, they kept changing where it was going to go. It was going to go to Tampa, 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 Tampa. And then it was going to hit us head on. Then they changed it again. No, it's going to hit the panhandle. It's going to hit Tampa, then go up through the panhandle of the state and things like that. And everybody knows that the job that I have, I have to I had to sign an agreement that I'm an essential employee and that I had to stay to help during hurricane, any kind of natural disaster.
Yeah.
So, I did that and worked really long hours in the office. This is okay. So this is 48 hours before the storm hit. So Monday and Tuesday, which would have been the 26th and 27th, worked really long hours in the office. Because we had to make sure we had all of our plans together and things like that. And we were told to work from home on Wednesday as long as we could. So we worked really long on those days. On Tuesday, the 27th, it was said that that it had shifted and that it was supposed to hit my city head on. And like, I mean, the eye and everything was supposed to go right over my city. They changed it again later that afternoon. Said nope, it's going to go up towards Tampa. So
And
they did not issue any mandatory evacuations
so hold on, this was how many days before it hit?
the day before because
Okay, but
like
Christy,
here,
real
let
quick.
me go back.
Well, I don't want to cut you off, but I
Mhm.
just want to interject. Were people already evacuating at this point? Y'all are watching, waiting, listening for instructions, but were people already evacuating in your city?
So so no, they weren't. And there is so much backlash going on about that right now, and I can get into
Wow.
that in just a minute. But it is stated for the state of Florida, and I guess every state has their own emergency management plan, but that if it's expected to affect 10% or more of the population of that area, that mandatory evacuations are to be given. But because they kept changing the track so much, nobody really knew. So I'm sitting at work on the 27th. We know that the storms, we know where the storm is and that it's getting ready to hit on the 28th. We know it's headed towards Florida. Um, at 2 o'clock, I'm at work and I get the mandatory evacuation order. Well, I've told you, I lived through Irma, and that was the biggest disaster trying to evacuate I have ever been through in my life. Another situation we were supposed to be head on, and took us 19 hours to get out of the state of Florida. So said that, and 42 hours to get to Kentucky.
That was
Said
last.
that I would never evacuate.
Okay, that was last time, correct? I'm sorry, I was hitting these comments. My
Yeah,
bad.
with Hurricane Irma, the really big storm.
Okay,
So
so there was
it took
already
us forever to evacuate.
it was a big, basically a big ordeal. Hate to cut you off, a big ordeal, and you said that you wouldn't do it again, correct? You told me that, right? That y'all weren't going to
Ever,
evacuate.
ever.
Okay, so
Said I
continue,
would
sis.
never evacuate again.
Okay.
So on Tuesday the 27th, I get a mandatory evacuation order, and I let my bosses know, and they were like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, at this point, it's 12 hours before the storm. What am I going to do? I don't have time to evacuate, and I'd already signed, a contract with my company that I would be there as an essential employee. So just work the rest of that evening, get home, and we're already getting rain and things like that on the 27th. Haven't got any wind or anything like that. Wake up on the 28th to a phone call from the head boss of our whole region that said, Christy, I'm very concerned about you. He said it is definitely 100% hitting your city head on. And so I just said, okay, well, here we go. And let me back up just a little bit. So on the 27th, about 2 o'clock in the morning, we did start getting some wind and some heavy rain, and even heard things falling on the roof and stuff like that. So I sent some of my family to a shelter that was open, um, to just to be there. I was staying at the house regardless. I wasn't going
Okay.
anywhere. And they went. It was already so full that it was standing room
This
only.
is
They wouldn't
crazy.
even allow them to sit. They wouldn't even allow them to sit down, not
Wow.
even to try to lay down. Like, the cots were already full. Now this was at a huge school. So they could have opened up classrooms, anything, but no, they have them all in just this one huge area, and wouldn't even allow people to sit down,
Christy,
trying to figure out what they were going to do.
were they like sitting ducks basically? That's what kind of sounds like. And where was this center at? Was it in the safe zone basically?
Yeah, so we are about 3 miles from Charlotte Harbor. So it was even further inland than that. It was about probably 6 miles. So the storm surge would definitely not hit there as
Okay.
much as it would like my house or anything like that. So
Okay, so what
uh,
happened there? So your people, your sister, Kara, they went and they turned around. Is that correct?
they turned around. They said, "Screw this. If I'm going to have to be miserable through a storm and all of that, I mean, not even allowing people to sit down. It was just absolutely ridiculous." So they all came home.
And
Everybody came home.
and I kind of
And,
talked
mhm.
about it before because I said, well, I mean, I think a lot of people people that might have stayed there probably had the same mindset, like kind of what I would have said. I guess if it's gonna go to crap, if I'm gonna die, I'd rather die in my home. I hate to say it like that. Be
That is the
that
truth.
yeah.
They couldn't have paid. They The sheriff could have came knocking on the door and said, "You got to go. You got to go to the shelter," and I was not leaving my house. Like my mind was made up. I was not going.
Okay.
You can call it hard headed. You can call it stubborn. Whatever. I was not leaving my house.
Okay.
But I sent my people out.
Okay.
um.
So what
they,
happened
they
next?
all turn around
Let's
and
get
come
to
back.
it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So they turn around. They come back home, and we pretty much just sleep through the night. Lots of heavy rain, things like that. The next morning, I'm going live on Instagram showing, the wind starting to pick up and things like that. All I can say, Nino, is that as the day progressed, it just was absolutely horrific. I was sitting outside and got a video of when the screens and the pool cage started coming down,
Yeah.
and that's before the winds had even got to the point that it was considered catastrophic.
And sis, what at this point, I'm trying to lead on here. So at this point, what were you thinking? What happened next? But what was your thought process going into, I guess, the eye of the storm, or going in, I guess, into the beginning of the storm? Should I say? Go ahead.
So we were still having meetings through work, through like Google,
Okay.
Google video chat and all that. And at 1 o'clock that afternoon, we lost all power. Everything was gone. The power was gone. Internet was gone. Everything was gone. And this is when it really, really, really started picking up. Around 2 and 3 o'clock, we had tornado warnings everywhere because of the only way I can describe this storm. And if you are not in one, you just have no idea. Gusts up to 153 miles per hour. Oh, I'm sorry, my son just corrected me. Gusts up to 180 miles per hour at some point, but most of the gusts stayed around 153 miles per hour. It's like being in a tornado for 9.5 hours.
Wow.
Whenever I tell you the things that I saw, it was just absolutely crazy. I literally look up and there is a tree that looks like it's just gliding through the air. And I'm not talking about like a little bitty, skimpy tree. I'm talking about like 20-foot long tree just floating through the air. It hit so hard about 3 feet from our house that I felt the earth shake. And we had, a lot of outside damage, but our house was completely spared. We had a little bit of roof damage on one corner of the house. We have a hurricane roof, which is amazing. We have hurricane doors and windows. No, none of the glass in the windows broke. None of the doors broke. Our front door did. I'll get to that in a minute.
But Christi, but before you get to the devastation through the storm, did you ever have any fear that this was going to be it for you, or did you kind of have an inclination that you might pass through the storm, or how was your mindset during the storm in the hardest point of it?
So, to be honest, whenever the trees and everything started hitting the roof, that's when I got scared, because all I can say is you could feel the wind even though you're inside. It was so loud and the pressure was so great. And then you would hear thud, and it's another tree coming down, and thud. Wow. And you just think, am I in the right place of where I should be? Which I had my niece and her 15-month-old baby in the interior closet, and had all the water and everything stacked in there. And I'm just like going from door to door trying to make sure that everything's okay. But there was about 3 hours of the storm. So that's the part of the storm that was like, you really heard the trees falling and all that, but that was not the worst of the storm.
Okay.
So my boss is able to text me on my work phone. For some reason, that text came through. All internet's down. Everything is down. And he said, the eye of the storm is passing over you right now. It's going to show that it's calm outside. Do not leave your house.
Wow.
When I tell you, it was the most eerie calm you have ever seen in your life. You go from 153 mile per hour winds to nothing, Nino. Not even a leaf rustling in the wind. Nothing, not a drop of rain. There wasn't sunshine, but it's completely calm outside. An hour later, I actually went and took a nap while the eye of the storm was going over us, because I thought, this is over. We made it. We're good. That eye of the storm passed, and we got the backside of that wind, and I am telling you, that's when it was the worst.
Wow.
You heard transformers blowing everywhere. You see trees.
What did that sound like? What did that sound like, them blowing everywhere?
It's just like a big bomb. It's like
okay.
a boom. Yeah.
Wow.
And Then you see, like, I peeked out the front door. So our front door did break, but it didn't, the glass part didn't break because of the circular wind. It literally sucked our door open and it cracked the door frame. So then we weren't able to secure the door unless we tied like this string around it and all of that. But
Wow.
uh I looked outside and entrances. My son got for his 16th birthday, got an SUV from his dad, and the water was already up to the undercarriage of it. And then I looked down both ends of the street, and trees are blocking both entrances into that street. Both are blocked. You can't get in, out, can't do anything. Everything's flooded, and that's when the worst wind picked up. Is after the eye passed, and the next 4 hours I honestly did not know if any of us were going to make it out of there. And that's not me trying to hype things up. It's the honest truth.
Christy.
I said lots of prayers,
Well, I was fixing to get
and if this
Christy.
that
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I was going to get to that. What actually, at that moment when you think you are on the brink of destruction, maybe even death, hate to say it like that, but it's the truth. Were you clinging on to your faith? Were you praying to Jesus? Can you let us know, as people of faith, Christians, what were you doing at that spot, that time in your life when you thought it might be over? What was your going through your mind, and were you praying? Can you tell us at least what was going on at that point, sis?
I always pray. I pray through the good and the bad,
Amen.
and I just I mean, I remember just it being a simple prayer, and I told my son to pray. I told my whole family to pray. But I just remember me saying, whatever my fate is, it's in your hands, and I'm ready for whatever you have in store for me. And he has saved me numerous times in
Amen.
2022 so far, and we had a lot of damage and all that, but it wasn't even a prayer like you hear some people say, like, I prayed for him to spare my life and all that. That's not even the prayer. It was the most calm prayer I think I've ever had. It was
Wow.
just, I know that you can calm the storm, and that whatever my fate is meant to be is meant to be. And it was kind of like like, honestly, the reckoning of just whatever he has in store for me is what's going to be. But I'm with my family, and that's what mattered at that point. We weren't separated. We were all there together, and I mean,
Wow.
we are struggling. I can't even tell you. It's bad. It's a war zone down here,
Oh, and we're gonna get to that,
but
ladies and gentlemen, real quick, Christy. But I just want to stay back on the faith. Of course, we praise Jesus through the storms and through the mountain, the valleys, and the highs and lows. But sis, basically, I guess you came to peace. I guess you basically were just like, whatever happens at this point, let it be, kind of a peaceful feeling, I would say, in a lot of turmoil. And it's kind of crazy you say that, because I see a lot of Christians, when they pass on or something, it's kind of a peaceful situation. And I guess that's just everybody listening. I got to promote the gospel that basically with Christ, amen, you get that peace. It's better,
hmm
having faith, and it can really help you, especially at a certain point in your life when you don't know what's going to happen, and you cling on to that old rugged cross, as they say, and you just tell the Lord Jesus, if I go with you, Lord, I go with you, and I thank you for my life, and what an attitude to have, y'all. Just being humble and grateful. Thanks for sharing that, Christy, and we'll touch on with the
no,
next
and I mean, and
aspect in a minute, y'all.
I
Just
do
crazy.
remember saying.
Go ahead.
I do remember saying in my prayer, Nino, I just remember saying, I hope that I have done everything right to for you to forgive me for my sins, and that I mean, I've told everybody I'm not scared to die. I'm not. Whenever my mother died and she told me that earth is just the temporary life, it changed my whole Christianity. It changed my outlook on death. It changed everything. So it was like me just having a chat with Jesus. Like, if it's my time, it's my time,
Amen.
and just take care of my family and all of that. But I mean, it was scary. Like I said, we it was expected to hit Tampa head on. I work in Sarasota. They never even lost. They never even lost. My coworker that lives right off of Siesta Key never even lost internet or power. But you wouldn't believe the difference between 35 miles.
Yeah,
35 miles between Sarasota.
and I wanted to
Mhm.
get to that real quick, Christy, but let's continue on this path. So, you're praying, you're with your family. What happens next? The storm passes. Uh, explain that part until you leave outside and see the whole
So
devastation, and then
yeah.
anybody watching, we're fixing to go into a lot more of the story where there's neglect. officials aren't doing their jobs. There's a lot of problems still happening in Florida. We wanted to touch on that. That's really why we did this live. Also, not just to document Christi's testimony, to give praise to our Lord and Savior, but also to showcase that people in Florida are still, in a hurting position, and maybe some feel like they've been forgotten. Christi, go ahead, continue. You go through the next 3-4 hours, what happens, and then this lead out to that, to the devastation, and then we'll push to what's happening after that, and then to now. Go ahead.
Right. So the eye of the storm, went over us. It was so calm. Then I told you the really, really bad, like that was the worst thing I have ever been through in my life. It was terrible, terrible, terrible wind and lightning, and you can't tell if the wind that you're hearing is a tornado or if it's trees falling around you or what it is. So around 9:15, I grabbed my son and I said, I want you to give me the flashlight. I said, I'm just going to walk barely outside this door. I said, I just want to see how bad the wind is again. And it calmed down a lot. It was still gusting probably about 55, 60 miles per hour. But I was down to like 20% battery on my phone and wanted to have some kind of access to something if I needed it. So I went to my car. I sat in my car for like an hour charging my phone. And heard trees and everything, but it's pitch black outside at that point. 9:00 at night, you can't see anything. You can just I tripped like 4 times trying to get out to my car because of all the tree limbs and branches and debris everywhere. And at that point, charged my phone the best I could and literally went in and laid down and went to sleep until the next morning.
Okay. And the next morning, what happened?
Woke up super early, right as the sun was rising, and took my first step outside and thought, how did I survive this? A nuclear bomb has gone off in my neighborhood. How did we survive this? Compared to my neighbor's house, to everybody in my street. When I tell you 30-foot trees down in the rows that are so big that people are out there trying to get chainsaws to them to try to remove some of the debris, and neighbors are out crying and talking, and you just look around, and that's just in my neighborhood. So looked at that for quite a while and was like, okay, I'm not going to get emotional, going to just do what we have to clean up, to get things going. Went inside, literally started the generator and got we didn't start the generator when the winds were that high. So the next morning started the generator, put sausages on the grill and potatoes and onions on the grill.
Let's go.
And I have a picture of that on my Instagram, but did that and didn't even leave my house at all that day. Just, was pretty much trying to handle things on the inside and things like that. And that night is whenever I got out for the first time, and you start traveling down main streets, and there is not a standing stop sign, not a standing stop light, no street signs. Gas stations completely collapsed to the ground. When I say complete blackout. So I'm in the car with
Christi,
my niece, and we're just...
Christi, real quick, can you compare it to a movie at this point? I hate to bring up a movie, but what movie would you compare it to, driving around the devastation of, your city in Florida at that point?
I don't even know what to compare it to. You think of something like I Am Legend, just
wow,
where it's complete just nothingness. Like there's cars and there's buildings, but the windows are blown out of the huge bank buildings. Cars have trees on top of them. There is not one working stoplight, not one anything in my whole city. And so we get in my car. We get in my niece's car, and curfew. They set curfew at 9:00. Everybody had to be in at 9 unless you were an essential employee, proving that you were going to work.
And this is for what? For the looters, basically, curfew?
It is for looters, and because power lines are down, and because of just the dangers of everything.
And real quick,
hanging tree limbs.
And real quick, y'all, we're going to touch on this about the scammers. There's a bunch of scamming going on. Christi, I saw you're a part of a group in Facebook, sis, real popular group. There's a lot of issues in Florida, and we're going to touch on that in a minute, y'all. We're continuing on with Christi's story and testimony, and then we're going to get to the parts about the snakes and the alligators and the sharks that are walking amongst the people of Florida right now. But continue, Christy. You're with your family in the car driving at night. My bad.
Yeah, so all I can see is these line of lights, and I'm like, what is that? And it is a food truck that there were two food trucks from families that had pulled into parking lots, and it was a Spanish family and a Jamaican family that had brought their food trucks
Wow. Hey,
and were
shout,
feeding
hey,
people
shout
to
them
get.
out, right? Wow.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm sorry. As much as we talk about who does what for people. It was the Jamaican family and the Spanish family that fed
Wow.
a line 3.5 hours long to get a taco, to get a burrito, to get a bottle of cold water, and 3.5 hours long to get that. At that time, it's getting so late and there's so much stuff all over the road. We go back home and settle in, and that's the night that I slept in my car because the door being broke. It had come open and our house was filled with mosquitoes. That's our state bird, is the mosquito. And when I tell you they were buzzing your ears, you're getting bit every 2 seconds. They were everywhere. So slept in my car um, that Thursday night. So the storm happened on Wednesday, went to bed, woke up on Thursday, assessed all the damage, kind of just was trying to do a little bit of stuff around the house the best you can with no power and being as hot. Because that's what I told you, Nino. I said the storm is terrible, but what people don't realize is the after storm that gets so bad. Whenever you don't have power, you're back to sunny, beautiful days in Florida the day after. It's
Back to
back up to
business,
90
right?
degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, back up to 90 degrees, hot, and trying to, and don't have cold water, don't have running water, don't have any of that.
Wow.
Um, but the one thing I wanted to say is there's also a video on my Instagram of Fawcett Hospital that was completely almost destroyed during the storm. It took out the whole third floor intensive care unit, and they had to evacuate people. And I mean, it just was something that it's some. Hurricane Charlie came through the same town that I live in 2004, and they said that was like just going through a thunderstorm compared to going through this. So that pretty much just led me up to I ended up going into work on Friday and cried and told them that I had slept in my car and how bad things were. And I was blessed that the CEO of my company found out and helped me find some lodging about 2.5 hours away from my home so that I could still work, still bring in income and stuff like that.
Wow.
I was blessed so many times through the storm, I'm alive. There was not real true structural damage done to my house compared to my neighbors around me.
Wow.
My car had some limbs and stuff that were wedged underneath it pretty tight. Had some scrapes on my car from tree limbs and things like that blew through the air, but it's nothing. I mean, what I endured to compare to what some people endured, I mean, the intensive care had people on respirators that they're trying to evacuate in 150 mile per hour wind, as the whole roof is collapsing on these people. I mean, it's just,
Wow.
it was, like I said, it was like, and it's still to this day. I drove home last night to look at everything again, and it's still a war zone, is all I can say. It's just, I ran through all kinds of glass last night, and it's it's going to take a long time to rebuild.
Okay, so there's her testimony, not y'all, and her experience living through Hurricane Ian. So at this point, Christy, so I guess the days pass. You're able to get shelter. Some can't. Some don't have shelter, water. I mean, they're going through it. Let's go ahead and explain, sis, up to this point, what you have seen. You have a lot on your mind, especially regarding officials. We don't want to get too political on here, y'all, in this case, but can you explain what's happening, sis? I'm thinking about looters. I mean, there's all kinds of scammers. Can you let us know about the nitty gritty that's happening in your city, right? Like, what's the thing? What's the some of the worst things that you've seen? Some things that people need to be aware of, and whatnot. Go ahead.
So the first thing I would have to say is I started a Facebook group years ago, about 4 years ago, that is representation of my city, and and it's just kind of a fun place to go and put reviews of businesses and talk about, upcoming community events and all that. It it was at like 8,000 followers, and overnight it grew 2,000 followers from people trying to check in on their loved ones. Let me tell you some of the scams that were going on. So there was everybody like I I think there was 1,200 posts of people going, I can't reach my mom and dad that live down there full time. I'm in New York, I'm in Connecticut, and I don't know if they're alive. I don't know, what's going on. Can please anybody give me an update on this area? Knowing that nobody's really even been out of the house yet, and this man and several men were like, for $150, I'll take a video of your house, what it looks like, and knock on the door and see if I can reach your loved one. And it was just,
Wow.
I just couldn't believe that somebody like would even do that. Like, you've got family members worried to death about their loved ones, and well, for $150, I'll do it. And so, you see a lot of that. There's been a lot of contractors down here that have been arrested that don't have license. There's one that's all over the news right now that got arrested. But lots of scams, lots of things like that. But it has been the most beautiful of things and the most awful of things. I have never seen a community pull together so much. And, I was talking to you about this. I think it was a blessing, a blessing and a curse that I got to find shelter, because then it gave me access to cable television. And I'm hearing how the government has said that, nobody will suffer through this, that everybody's going to have access to FEMA, that everybody's going to have access to all these benefits and things like that. And it is absolutely 100% not the truth.
Wow.
I know people's house so I don't even care to tell people where I live. I live in Fort Charlotte. I worked for 3 years in Fort Myers. They were the ones that took the worst of everything. That's where all the deaths occurred, were Lee County, because of the storm waters and the surge. And you'll probably show the picture, but that is a picture of my coworker's residence that you can't even see her house anymore. It's so far underwater. And she walked away without one belonging to her name except what she left with. And FEMA denied her. FEMA denied the stuff at my house. FEMA denied the man that just spent $240,000 remodeling his house less than 4 months ago. There has not been one application I have heard of from FEMA that has been approved. And are they doing some infrastructure things? Absolutely. Like in the Sanibel Island, where the causeway completely collapsed and people were stuck out on the island. They were trying to hurry up and build a road to get access there and things like that. And that's all good for the news. But let's talk about the common folk here too. You've got people here that can't, that we were ordered that we couldn't even brush teeth, get in the shower, and even use any of the water on any part of our body. People were going to hospitals because of all the bacteria in the water, and especially the elderly. So, you see these things of all these politicians saying, no expense spared. We're going to make sure that all your lodging is paid for, that all your food is replaced, and not one of those things has come to fruition.
Wow.
And it's already being, not a big, huge story anymore, because it's 2 weeks out now. But you've got people down here. Our stoplights are still being run by generators in my city. We don't even have working stoplights still. And so it's just frustrating to hear promises and know that it's not what's happening. It's just
Christi,
not what's happening down here.
do you feel forgotten?
Absolutely, 100% feel forgotten.
Do you think?
Feel
Do you think that?
and feel
Go ahead.
guilty. And feel guilty for feeling forgotten. I'm alive, and there were people clinging to the rooftops like to be saved, just like happened in Hurricane Katrina. But at the same time, know that I have a family, me and my son, to provide for too, and that I should be afforded I should be afforded the things that are being promised, and none of that is coming to fruition.
Well,
Like the common folk is not thought of down here.
well, I mean, I don't want to be political, but you know what we do for other, I don't even want to say this like this, but we do for other, different groups of people in this country that ain't even, citizens. And I digress. I don't want to be political at all. We
Yep.
like you said before, Christy, we ain't trying to get kicked off. We just barely got put back on YouTube. But basically, it's pretty sad that our fellow, Florida, residents, Floridians are being, basically forgotten that, it done passed and now everybody goes about their life, but there's people in Florida, this has changed their life drastically. Since we're winding down to the end of this video, everybody, this is Florida on our mind. Christy is giving her testimony and updates on this situation. Anything else you want to say or add, Christy, before we go ahead and wrap this up? Go ahead, sis.
Just the one thing that I wanted to say is, I haven't seen any FEMA. I haven't seen any FEMA supply stations like, I heard them talking about on the news that was going and necessities to people. What I have seen is I've seen Outback, provide lunch, hot meals for people to go and get. I've seen they brought the McRib, which I personally don't care for McDonald's, but people could get free cheeseburgers and hamburgers and things like that. It's been the community that's taking care of the community, and all these people from out of state that are bringing in truckloads of water and baby
Wow.
wipes and diapers and those things. I haven't seen any government assistance at all.
Sis, real quick, people are asking the other day on our live, like, can they donate to anything? Do you recommend anything that you think is out there helping organizations that are helping? Is anybody or anywhere that you think that someone, if they wanted to donate, they can, that you believe is legit?
I wouldn't donate. I would not donate a dime there because there is so many scams. It's not. There's so to anybody.
Okay.
Do I?
Yeah, to anybody. You said.
Yeah. So this is another thing, and I need to do a little bit more research on this. They were talking about this on the news. So a GoFundMe was set up for the people of Florida that $35 million was donated to. My understanding is they decided to use that for infrastructure and not for the people of Florida. And then there was a private one set up for Florida. And I couldn't do it. All I can tell you is our grocery stores are completely bare. When I say bare, I mean, I've got video of that too, like not a piece of chicken, ground beef, anything. If you know somebody in Florida that you can Amazon things to, non-perishable things and things like that, that's the only kind of donation I would do.
Good point.
Is like cases of water, non-perishable food.
Yeah, amen.
Yep, toilet paper and things like that. But other than that, you don't know what's going where, and there's nothing to spend money on. There's nothing in the grocery stores. Gas stations are finally getting back up. I didn't even have to wait in line yesterday at the gas station. Gas stations are finally, getting back up and running and things like that. But that's pretty much the only thing you can even spend money on is gas. And I just would personally I don't think that a money donation at this point right now is what people are needing. They need the basics.
Interesting, sis, that right now in a devastation zone, basically money is basically worthless. Let's go ahead and keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, for any further disasters, right? With that, sis, we're going to go ahead and wind it down. Christy, I just want you to give you the final word, sis. The platform's yours. Say what you want to say. Whatever's on your heart. You survived something crazy and you're still living through it. Sister Christy, go ahead. The floor is yours. Final words.
I just want, this is truly the most heartfelt thing I'll probably ever say. Jesus never forsakes any of us. I survived in 2022 a stroke, 2 cardiac procedures. I'm not even in my 50s yet. I'm still in my 40s. A stroke that was unexplained, 2 cardiac surgeries, and a Category 4 hurricane. And all you have to do is just trust him with your whole heart and everything will be fine. And, I love all my people and just make sure that he's the center of everything and everything will be fine.
Amen. Thank you for that, sis. Thank you for your time. Make sure I'm messing up over here, y'all. Let's see here.
But on a funny note,
go ahead.
I do want to say this, Nino. So Grady Judd is one of the toughest sheriffs in America, and he's about 4 or 5 counties up from me. And he said, if anybody tries to loot your house, he said, turn them into grated cheese. He said we are a 2A state, and Governor DeSantis pretty much said the same thing, that absolutely looting will
Wow.
not be tolerated for any reason, and do what you have to protect your property.
Awesome. I mean, that's great to hear. The way it should be, protect yours and what you own. And with that, y'all, it's Christy. We just wanted to shed light on the situation in Florida. Let Florida know that they're still on our mind, our hearts, and in our prayers. Everybody out there, if you can, say a prayer for your fellow citizens in Florida, the patriots, Christians, and even the heathen. Right? The Bible says the rain it rains on the just and the unjust. And there it is, y'all. Thanks for watching. We just wanted to give this quick update and testimony from Christy in the eye of the storm. Christy, thank you. Everybody, God bless y'all for watching. And we're out of here. You're an American. You're a patriot. You got grit. Act like it. God
Act
bless.
like it.